Continuing Mark Twain's A Cure for the Blues. Not many days afterward, as surrounded by fragrant flowers, she sat one evening at twilight to enjoy the cool breeze that whispered notes of melody along the distant groves. The little birds perched on every side as if to watch the movements of their new visitor. The bells were tolling when Alfonso silently stole along by the wild wood flowers, holding in his hand his favorite instrument of music, his eye continually searching for Ambulinia, who hardly seemed to perceive him as she played carelessly with songsters that hopped from branch to branch. Nothing could be more striking than the difference between the two. Nature seemed to have given the more tender soul to Alfonso and the stronger and more courageous to Ambulina. A deep feeling spoke from the eyes of Alfonso, such a feeling as can only be expressed by those who are blessed as admirers, and by those who are able to return the same with sincerity of heart. He was a few years older than Ambulinia. She had turned a little into her 17th. He had almost grown up in the Cherokee country, with the same equal proportions as one of the natives, but little intimacy had existed between them until the year 41, because the youth felt that the character of such a lovely girl was too exalted to inspire any other feeling than that of quiet reverence. But as lovers will not always be insulted, at all times and under all circumstances, by the frowns and cold looks of crabbed old age, which should continually reflect dignity upon those around, and treat the unfortunate as well as the fortunate with a graceful mien. He continued to use diligence and perseverance. All this lighted a spark in his heart that changed his whole character, and like the unyielding deity that follows the storm to check its rage in the forest, he resolves for the first time to shake off his embarrassment and return where he had before only worshipped. At last we begin to get the major's measure. We are able to put this and that casual fact together and build the man up before our eyes and look at him. And after we have got him built, we find him worth the trouble. By the above comparison between his age and Ambulinia's, we guess the war-worn veteran to be 22. And the other facts stand thus. He had grown up in the Cherokee country with the same equal proportions as one of the natives. How flowing and graceful the language, and yet how tantalizing as to the meaning. He had been turned adrift by his father, to whom he had been somewhat of a dutiful son. He wandered in distant lands, came back frequently to the scenes of his boyhood, almost destitute of many of the comforts of life, in order to get into the presence of his father's winter-worn locks, and spread a humid veil of darkness around his expectations. But he was always promptly sent back to the cold charity of the combat again. He learned to play the fiddle and make a name for himself in that line. He had dwelt among the wild tribes and had philosophized about the despoilers of the kingdoms of the earth, and found out, the cunning creature, that they refer their differences to the learned for settlement. He had achieved a vast fame as a military chieftain, the Achilles of the Florida campaigns, and then he got him a spelling book and started to school. He had fallen in love with Ambulinia Valier while she was teething, but had kept it to himself a while, out of the reverential awe which he felt for the child. But now, at last, like the unyielding deity who follows the storm to check its rage in the forest, he resolves to shake off his embarrassment, and to return where before he had only worshipped. The major, indeed, has made up his mind to rise up and shake his faculties together, and see if he can't do that thing himself. This is not clear, but no matter about that. There stands the hero, compact and visible. He is no mean structure, considering that his creator never created anything before, and hadn't anything but rags and wind to build with this time. It seems to me that no one can contemplate this odd creature, this quaint and curious blatherskite, without admiring McClintock, or, at any rate, loving him and feeling grateful to him. For McClintock made him, and gave him to us. Without McClintock, we could not have had him, and would now be poor. But we must come to the feast again. Here is a courtship scene. down there in the romantic glades, among the raccoons, alligators, and things that has merit. Peculiar literary merit. See how Achilles woos. Dwell upon the second sentence, particularly the close of it, and the beginning of the third. Never mind the new personage, Laos, who's intruded upon us unheralded and unexplained. That is McClintock's way. It is his habit. It is a part of his genius. He cannot help it. He never interrupts the rush of his narrative to make introductions. Well, different styles for different people, right? It could not escape Ambulinia's penetrating eye that he sought an interview with her, which she as anxiously avoided, and assumed a more distant calmness than before, seemingly to destroy all hope. After many efforts and struggles with his own person, with timid steps, the Major approached the damsel with the same caution as he would have done in the field of battle. "Lady Ambulinia," said he, trembling, "I have long desired a moment like this. I dare not let it escape. I fear the consequences, yet I hope your indulgence will, at least, hear my petition. Can you not anticipate what I would say, and what I am about to express? Will you not, like Minerva, who sprung from the brain of Jupiter, release me from thy winding chains, or cure me?" "Say no more, Alfonso," answered Ambulinia with a serious look, raising her hand as if she intended to swear eternal hatred against the whole world. "Another lady in my place would have perhaps answered your question in bitter coldness. I know not the little arts of my sex. I care but little for the vanity of those who would chide me, and am unwilling as well as ashamed to be guilty of anything that would lead you to think all is not gold that glitters. So be not rash in your resolution. It is better to repent now than to do it in a more solemn hour. Yes, I know what you would say. I know that you have a costly gift for me, the noblest that man can make, your heart. You should offer it to one so unworthy. Heaven, you know, has allowed my father's house to be made a house of solitude, a home of silent obedience, which my parents say is more to be admired than big names and high-sounding titles. Notwithstanding all this, let me speak the emotions of an honest heart. Allow me to say, in the fullness of my hopes, that I anticipate better days. The bird may stretch its wings towards the sun, which it can never reach, and flowers of the field appear to ascend in the same direction, because they cannot do otherwise. But the man confines his complaints to the saints in whom he believes, for in their abodes of light they know no more sorrow. From your confession and indicative looks, I must be that person. If so, deceive not yourself." Alfonso replied, "Pardon me, my dear madame, for my frankness. I have loved you from my earliest days. Everything grand and beautiful hath borne the image of Ambulinia. While precipices on every hand surround me, your guardian angel stood and beckoned me away from the deep abyss. In every trial and every misfortune I have met with your helping hand, yet I never dreamed or dared to cherish thy love, till a voice impaired with age encouraged the cause, and declared they who acquired thy favor should win a victory. I saw how Laos worshipped thee. I felt my own unworthiness. I began to know jealousy a strong guest, indeed, in my bosom. Yet I could see if I gained your admiration, Laos was to be my rival. I was aware that he had the influence of your parents, and the wealth of a deceased relative, which is too often mistaken for permanent and regular tranquility. Yet I have determined, by your permission, to beg an interest in your prayers, to ask you to animate my drooping spirits by your smiles and your winning looks. For if you but speak, I shall be conqueror, my enemies shall stagger like Olympus shakes. And though the earth and sea may tremble, and the charioteer of the sun may forget his dashing steed, yet I am assured that it is only to arm me with divine weapons which will enable me to complete my long-tried intention. Return to yourself, Alfonso, said Ambulinia pleasantly. A dream of vision has disturbed your intellect. You are above the atmosphere, dwelling in the celestial regions. Nothing is there that urges or hinders, nothing that brings discord into our present litigation. I entreat you to condescend a little, and be a man, and forget it all. When Homer describes the battle of the gods and noble men fighting with giants and dragons, they represent under this image our struggles with the delusions of our passions. You have exalted me, an unhappy girl, to the skies. You have called me a saint and portrayed me in your imagination. An angel in human form. Let her remain such to you. Let her continue to be as you have supposed, to be assured that she will consider a share in your esteem as her highest treasure. Think not that I would allure you from the path in which your conscience leads you, for you know I respect the conscience of others, as I would die for my own. Alfonso, if I am worthy of thy love, let such a conversation never again pass between us. Go seek a nobler theme. We will seek it in the stream of time as the sun sets in the Tigris. As she spake these words, she grasped the hand of Alfonso, saying, at the same time, peace and prosperity attend you, my hero. Be up and doing. Closing her remarks with this expression, she walked slowly away, leaving Alfonso astonished and amazed. He ventured not to follow or detain her. Here he stood alone, gazing at the stars. Confounded as he was, here he stood. Yes, there he stood. There seems to be no doubt about that. Nearly half of this delirious story has now been delivered to the reader. It seems a pity to reduce the other half to a cold synopsis. Pity is more than pity. It is a crime, for to synopsize McClintock is to reduce a sky-flushing flagration to dull embers. It is to reduce barbaric splendor to ragged poverty. McClintock never wrote a line that was not precious. He never wrote one that could be spared. He never framed one from which a word could be removed without damage. Every sentence that this master has produced may be likened to a perfect set of teeth, white, uniform, beautiful. If you pull one, the charm is gone. Still, it is now necessary to begin to pull and to keep it up. For lack of space requires us to synopsize. We left Alfonso standing there amazed at what we do not know. Not at the girl's speech, no. We ourselves should have been amazed at it, of course, for none of us has ever heard anything resembling it. But Alfonso was used to speeches made up of noise and vacancy, and could listen to them with undaunted mind, like the topmost topaz of an ancient tower. He was used to making them himself, but let it go. It cannot be guessed. We shall never know what it was that astonished him. He stood there a while, and then he said, alas, I am now grief's disappointed son at last. He did not stop to examine his mind and try to find out what he probably meant by that, because, for one reason, a mixture of ambition and greatness of soul moved upon his young heart, and started him for the village. He resumed his bench in school, and reasonably progressed in his education. His heart was heavy, but he was into society, and sought surcease of sorrow. Surcease? Okay. In his light distractions, he made himself popular with his violin, which seemed to have 1,000 chords, more symphonious than the muses of Apollo, and more enchanting than the ghosts of the hill. Than the ghost of the hills. This is obscure, but let it go. During this interval, Leos did some unencouraged courting, but at last, choked by his undertaking, he desisted. Presently, Alfonso again wends his way to the stately walls and new-built village. He goes to the house of his beloved. She opens the door herself. To my surprise, for Ambulinia's heart had still seemed free at the time of their last interview. Love beamed from the girl's eyes. One sees that Alfonso was surprised too, for when he caught that light, a halo of smothered shouts ran through every vein. A neat figure, a very neat figure indeed. Then he kissed her. The scene was overwhelming. They went into the parlor. The girl said it was safe, for her parents were abed and would never know. Then we have this fine picture flung upon the canvas, with hardly an effort, as you will notice. And advancing toward him, she gave him a bright display of her rosy neck, and from her head the ambrosial looks breathed divine fragrance. Her robe hung wavingly to his view, while she stood like a goddess confessed before him. There is nothing of interest in the couple's interview. Now at this point, the girl invites Alfonso to a village show, where jealousy is the motive of the play. First, she wants to teach him a wholesome lesson if he is a jealous person, but this is a sham and pretty shallow. McClintock merely wants a pretext to drag in a plagiarism of his upon a scene or two in Othello. The lovers went to the play. Alfonso was one of the fiddlers. He and Ambulinia must not be seen together, lest trouble follow with the girl's malignant father. We are made to understand that clearly. So the two sit together in the orchestra, in the midst of the musicians. This does not seem to be good art. In the first place, the girl would be in the way, for orchestras are always packed closely together, and there is no room to spare for people's girls. In the next place, one cannot conceal a girl in an orchestra without everybody taking notice of it. There can be no doubt, it seems to me, that this is bad art. Leos is present, of course. One of the first things that catches his eye is the maddening spectacle of Ambulinia leaning upon Alfonso's chair. This poor girl does not seem to understand even the rudiments of concealment, but she is in her 17th, as the author phrases it. And that is her justification. Leos meditates, constructs a plan, with personal violence as a basis, of course. It was their way down there. It is a good plan without any imagination in it. He will go out and stand at the front door when these two come, that he will arrest Ambulinia from the hands of the insolent Alfonso, and thus make for himself a more prosperous field of immortality than ever was decreed by omnipotence, or ever pencil drew or artist imagined. But dear me, while he was waiting there, the couple climb out at the back window and scurry home. This is romantic enough, but there is a lack of dignity in the situation. At this point, McClintock puts in the whole of his curious play, which we skip. Some correspondence follows now. The bitter father and the distressed lovers write the letters. Elopements are attempted. They are idiotically planned, and they fail. Then we have several pages of romantic powwow and confusion signifying nothing. Another elopement is planned. It is to take place on Sunday when everybody is at church, but the hero cannot keep the secret he tells everybody. Another author would have found another instrument when he decided to defeat this elopement, but that is not McClintock's way. He uses the person that is nearest at hand. The evasion failed, of course. Ambulinia, in her flight, takes refuge in a neighbor's house. Her father drags her home. The villagers gather, attracted by the racket. Alfonso is moved at this sight. The people followed on to see what was going to become of Ambulinia, while he, with downcast looks, kept at a distance until he saw them enter the abode of the father, thrusting her, that was the sigh of his soul, out of his presence into a solitary apartment, when she exclaimed, Alfonso, Alfonso, O Alfonso, where art thou with all thy heroes? Haste, oh, haste, come thou to my relief. Ride on the wings of the wind, turn thy force loose like a tempest, and roll on thy army like a whirlwind. Over this mountain of trouble and confusion, O friends, if any pity me, let your last efforts throng upon the green hills, and come to the relief of Ambulinia, who is guilty of nothing but innocent love. Alfonso called out with a loud voice, My God, can I stand this? Arouse up, I beseech you, and put an end to this tyranny. Come, my brave boys, said he, are you ready to go forth with your duty? They stood around him. Who, said he, will call us to arms? Where are my thunderbolts of war? Speak ye, the first, who will meet the foe? Who will go forward with me in this ocean of grievous temptation? If there is one who desires to go, let him come and shake hands upon the altar of devotion, and swear that he will be a hero, yes, a Hector in a cause like this, which calls aloud for a speedy remedy. Mine be the deed, said a a young lawyer, and mine alone. Venus alone shall quit her station before I will forsake one jot or tittle of my promise to you. What is death to me? What is all this warlike army, if it is not to win a victory? I love the sleep of the lover and the mighty, nor would I give it over to the blood of my enemies, should wreck with that of my own. But God forbid our slumber should soar on the blood of slumberer. Mr. Valier stands at his door with the frown of a demon upon his brow, with his dangerous weapon ready to strike the first man who should enter his door. Who will arise and go forward through blood and carnage to the rescue of my Ambulinia? Said Alfonso. All, exclaimed the multitude, and onward they went, and with their implements of battle, others of a more timid nature stood among the distant hills to see the result of the contest. That paragraph alone, just like with the last program on page 333 of this book, the bit about Minerva and Jupiter and all that, not escaping the eyes and that sort of thing, that was with the last program, justification for including this. It will hardly be believed that after all this thunder and lightning not a drop of rain fell, but such is the fact. Alfonso and his gang stood up and blackguarded Mr. Valier with rigor all night, getting their outlay back with interest. Then, in the early morning, the army and its general retired from the field, leaving the victory with their solitary adversary at his crowbar. This is the first time this has happened in romantic literature. The invention is original. Everything in this book is original. There is nothing hackneyed about it anywhere. Always in other romances, when you find the author leading up to a climax, you know what is going to happen. But in this book, it is different. The thing which seems inevitable and unavoidable never happens. It is circumvented by the art of the author every time. Another elopement was attempted. It failed. We have now arrived at the end, but it is not exciting. Mr. Clintock thinks it is, but it isn't. One day Alfonso sent Ambulinia another note, a note proposing elopement. Number 16. This time the plan is admirable, sagacious, ingenious, imaginative, deep, everything, and perfectly easy. One wonders why it was never thought of before. This is the scheme. Ambulinia is to leave the breakfast table ostensibly to attend the placing of these flowers, which should have been done a week ago, artificial ones, of course. The other wouldn't keep so long, and then instead of fixing the flowers, she is to walk out to the grove and go off with Alfonso. The invention of this plan overstrained with the author, that is plain, for he straightway shows the failing powers. The details of the plan are not many or elaborate. The author shall state them himself, this good soul whose intentions are always better than his English. You walk carelessly toward the Academy Grove, where you will find me with a lightning steed, elegantly equipped to bear you off, where we shall be joined in wedlock with the first connubile rites. Last scene of all, which the author, now much enfeebled, tries to smarten up and make acceptable to his spectacular heart by introducing some new properties: silver bow, golden harp, olive branch, things that can all come good in an elopement, no doubt, yet are not to be compared to an umbrella for real handiness and reliability in an excursion of that kind. And away she ran to the sacred grove, surrounded with glittering pearls that indicated her coming. Alfonso hails her with his silver bow and his golden harp. They meet, and Ambulinia's countenance brightens. Alfonso leads up the winged steed. Mount, said he, ye true-hearted, ye fearless soul, the day is ours. She sprang up upon the back of the young thunderbolt, A brilliant star sparkles upon her head. With one hand she grasps the reins, and with the other she holds an olive branch. Lend thy aid, ye strong winds, they exclaimed, ye moon, ye sun, and all ye fair host of heaven. Witness the enemy conquered. Hold, said Alfonso, thy dashing steed. Ride on, said Ambilinia. The voice of thunder is behind us. And onward they went, with such rapidity that they very soon arrived at rural retreat, where they dismounted and were united with all the solemnities that usually attend such divine operations. Who did that Golden Dawn magical tarot? I'm reminded of one of the cards with this. Wasn't there somebody on top of a black horse with a branch, or am I connecting that to something else? I don't remember which card it was at the moment. There is but one Homer, there is but one Shakespeare, there is but one McClintock, and his immortal book is before you. Homer could not have written this book. Shakespeare could not have written it. I could not have done it myself. There is nothing just like it in the literature of any country or of any epoch. It stands alone, and it is monumental. It adds G. Ragsdale McClintock to the sum of the Republic's imperishable names.